my class in assessment and evaluation in mathematics. Last time we talked about evaluation in mathematics. Today we will talk about assessment and evaluation in mathematics. These two processes, assessment and evaluation, are essential to ensure the success of students in learning mathematics. Assessment is the process of collecting information about student learning. Last time we defined evaluation as the process of collecting data or information for the purpose of evaluation. Now, assessment is more specific because it involves the collection or gathering of data and information about student learning. The results, the data of which are also used for purposes of evaluation. Now, there are three main purposes of assessment. The data gathered or collected in assessment are used to evaluate, number one, student learning. Number two, to evaluate the effectiveness of teaching or instruction. And number three, to evaluate the achievement of prescribed curriculum outcomes or learning outcomes. Now, assessment without evaluation will not be so useful because the collection or gathering of information or data alone is not very useful. The data have to be evaluated, the quality of the data have to be evaluated in relation to the learning outcomes or the prescribed curriculum outcomes. Now, there are two designs of assessments. Teachers design two types of assessments. These are assessments for learning and assessment as learning. And we will now differentiate between these two designs of assessments. Assessment for learning and assessment as learning. Again, assessments may be designed for learning. Assessment may be designed as learning, and or assessment may be designed as assessment of learning. Thus, we have three designs of assessments, that is, teachers may design assessments as assessments for learning, assessments as learning, and assessments of learning. And earlier we said that assessment is the process of collecting information or data about student learning. And assessment without evaluation would not be very useful because the collection of information alone would not be useful unless the data are evaluated, the quality of the data are evaluated in relation to the prescribed learning outcomes in mathematics. And so evaluation must follow assessment. And we say that evaluation is the process of making judgment or making decisions on the basis of the data gathered in assessment. The purpose of assessments for learning is in part to assist the students in learning mathematics, to keep track of their progress in learning mathematics. In these types of assessments, the mathematics teacher should put emphasis on mathematical knowledge and mathematical skills that are important. That is, in constructing assessments for learning, the tasks that the mathematics teachers would use should inform the students or learners of what mathematical knowledge and mathematical skills are important. The assessments for learning also help the teachers to keep track of the progress of the students, or to find where her or his students are in the learning continuum. And following these assessments for learning, the teacher may now plan for the next steps to help the students towards achievement of the curriculum outcomes or the learning outcomes in mathematics. An example of assessment for learning is the diagnostic test or pre-test that mathematics teacher may administer before the start of instruction. These samples of assessment for learning would generate data or information that would tell the mathematics teacher where the students are in the learning continuum. The information that would be generated using these examples of assessments for learning would tell the teacher the background knowledge that her or his students have, and the results of these assessments may form as basis for planning for teaching or instruction. And so assessments for learning are known to be developmental type of assessments, or these assessments for learning take a developmental perspective because they keep track of the growth of students in learning mathematics towards the achievement of learning outcomes. This implies that assessments for learning may also be conducted during the teaching learning process, not just in the beginning before instruction begins, as with the diagnostic test or pre-test. Before a new unit begins, the teacher may administer assessment for learning to determine if the students have learned the important mathematical knowledge and mathematical skills that may be needed for the learning of a new unit in mathematics. The second design of assessments is assessments as learning. These assessments are given to students or learners to encourage or to engage them in learning activities in mathematics. Like in diagnostic and pre-test that may not be graded and may be graded but may not be recorded, assessments as learning may not also be graded and recorded. But if they are recorded, if they are graded and recorded, results of assessments as learning would provide students with continuous flow of information about their progress in learning mathematics. Examples of assessments as learning are the seat works and assignments, exercises that mathematics teacher give to students, which allow the students to actively engage in learning mathematical skills and applying their understanding of mathematical concepts and knowledge. Other examples of assessments as learning are conversation, interview, interactive journal, reflective journal, and self-assessment. These examples of assessments as learning help the students to be aware of how they learn, of their own learning, and they help the students to be aware of their own thinking processes and how they think, which is described as metacognitive process, a process that makes the student aware of how he thinks. And these assessments as learning also help the students to experiment on different solution plans or different solution methods. They allow the students to make error and mistakes and learn from them. And in learning from their mistakes, their learning is enhanced. In addition to what I already said, assessments as learning help the students to monitor their own progress and growth in learning. They give them the opportunities to take responsibility in their own learning. Like if you give an assignment that may not be submitted and graded, a student who is responsible will do the assignment because he or she knows that it will serve as a practice for him in applying skills, mathematical skills and concepts. And when the students or learners are actively engaged or actively involved in learning activities in mathematics, then those assessments those exercises and learning activities become assessments as learning. Assessments as learning also help both the teachers, the mathematics teachers, and the students to evaluate the student learning and determine the areas where the students would need more assistance. And in identifying these areas where the students need more assistance, the teacher may plan to provide the students with more practice and exercises for them to master a mathematical skill and have a more in-depth understanding of mathematical concepts or mathematical knowledge. The third design of assessments is assessments of learning. These assessments provide the teachers with indicators of the achievement of students in learning mathematics. Results of assessments of learning also serve as the basis for grading the achievement of students' learning. And they may also form the basis for reporting the final grade of students as indicator of the student achievement in learning mathematics. Results of assessments of learning form the basis for evaluating the quality of learning of students. Assessments for learning, as I already mentioned earlier, may be administered during the teaching learning process or more particularly at the end of instruction for a unit. And results of these assessments for learning would reveal information about the students' achievement and understanding. And in this way, this assessment for learning may also be taken as assessment of learning. Results of assessments of learning may also be used by mathematics teacher to check the achievement of students in learning against the learning outcomes or the prescribed curriculum outcomes in mathematics. And these results may be used for the teacher to decide whether the students' learning falls below the expected outcome in learning mathematics, or whether the achievement of students in learning just met the minimum requirements for quality of learning, for achievement of the minimum requirement for achievement of quality learning in mathematics. Now, in a balanced classroom assessment process, the mathematics teacher has to do all these designs of mathematics. Assessments for learning, assessments as learning, and assessments of learning should all be undertaken by a mathematics teacher in a balanced classroom assessment process. Now know that assessments are designed for the purpose of improvement of teaching and learning. They are designed for the purpose of evaluation, for improvement of instruction, and for the enhancement of learning. But assessments would serve as the teaching and learning process under the following conditions. Number one, when assessments are closely integrated with the teaching learning process. Assessment should inform classroom decisions. Results of assessment should tell the teacher what to do in the teaching in the classroom. It should inform the results of assessments, should inform the teacher what activities she should undertake inside the classroom. And results of assessments should also inform teacher on what the students should do inside the classroom. What activities should be assigned to students for them to enhance their learning or overcome their weaknesses in using mathematical skills and applying mathematical concepts. They should tell the teacher what additional activities should be assigned to students. Number 2, assessment would serve as the teaching learning process if they are well planned in advance. The choice or selection of assessments are critical, and the teacher should reflect on the advantages and disadvantages of each assessment that she or he would use in the classroom. But assessments should measure what the teacher wants to measure. And 3, assessments would serve as the teaching learning when they are used appropriately. Formative and summative assessments must be used appropriately, and the use of assessment must be aligned to the curriculum and must be appropriate to the curriculum. And learning should be the focus of both the curriculum and assessment. And when this happens, when learning is the focus of both curriculum and assessment become the two sides of a coin. That is, they serve each other well in the interest of student learning. As concluding remarks, there are 2 important points that should be remembered by mathematics teacher. First, employing a variety of appropriate assessment increases the reliability of the evaluation of student learning. This means that the more assessments you administer, the more reliable is the result of your evaluation of students' learning. And it is advised that a variety of different modes of assessment should be employed, not just a paper and pencil type of assessment. And number 2 important point, assessment for learning and assessments as learning are the foundations of classroom activities. which means that results of these two designs of assessments, assessments for learning and assessments as learning, should form the basis for planning for classroom activities that mathematics teacher would like her or his students to engage in. And assessments for learning and assessments as learning should lead to assessments of learning. For your assignment, please try the following exercise. From your past experiences, give one type of assessment used by any of your teacher in any subject that was used as assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment of learning. So you will give 3 assessments used by any of your teachers before in any of the subjects you have taken before. 1 assessment that was used by a teacher in any subject for learning. 1 assessment that was used by any of your teacher before as assessment as learning. And 1 assessment example that was used by any of your teachers before as assessment of learning. And for each of the assessment that you give for these 3 designs of assessment, please explain or justify your answer why you say that this assessment used by any of your teachers before was used as assessment for learning. You explain why the assessment you gave was an assessment used by the teacher as assessment as learning. And you also justify or explain why the assessment you give was used as an assessment of learning by your teacher. And that completes our lesson for today. And thank you for joining me in my class today in Assessment and Evaluation in Mathematics. In the next lesson, we will take up the classroom assessment process.